The massive space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most moons, and home to the most important beings in the galaxy. Today, they had gathered for an emergency meeting that would change everything. Ambassador Zethkari stood in the center of the Great Council chamber. Her body was made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the curved walls. She had lived for over 3,000 years and had seen many worlds. But today, she felt worried in a way she had never felt before. "Fellow council members," she began, her voice ringing like distant bells. "We face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history." The chamber held representatives from across the known galaxy. There was High Arbiter Velnara from the Ethereal Collective, a being of pure energy wrapped in robes of starlight. The Silathi delegate Thys sat nearby, looking like a graceful tree with bark that changed colors with her emotions. Dozens of other species filled the curved rows of seats, all watching Zethkari with growing concern. Above them all, a massive holographic display showed a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked peaceful and beautiful, but Zethkari knew better. "This world is called Terra 3 by our survey teams," she continued. "Its inhabitants call it Earth. For the past 3 cycles, we have watched them with growing alarm." The hologram changed to show scenes from Earth's recent history. Explosions lit up the darkness as weapons of terrible power destroyed cities. Clouds of poison gas rolled across battlefields where millions died. The oceans turned dark with pollution, while forests burned and species died out forever. "These creatures call themselves humans," Zethkari explained. "They have developed nuclear weapons capable of destroying their entire world. They wage wars with chemical and biological weapons. They poison their own air and water. At their current rate of destruction, their planet will be uninhabitable within 2 of their centuries." Murmurs of shock and disgust rippled through the chamber. The Silathi delegate Thys shook her head sadly, her bark turning a deep blue color that meant grief. "How can any intelligent species be so destructive to their own home?" High Arbiter Velnara spoke next, his voice echoing with the wisdom of 10,000 years. "We have seen aggressive species before, but none quite like this. Most violent races destroy themselves quickly. These humans seem capable of maintaining their destructive behavior for extended periods." The hologram showed more scenes: humans fighting in organized armies with advanced weapons, cities burning while aircraft dropped bombs from above, massive explosions that turned entire areas into radioactive wasteland. But there were also scenes of humans working together, building great structures and exploring their world with curiosity. "They are not simply mindless destroyers," Zethkari admitted. "Our analysts have identified significant intelligence and creativity. They have art, music, literature, and science. Some of their technological achievements are impressive for such a young species, but their tendency toward violence appears to be stronger than their capacity for peace." Another council member stood up. This was Commander Herextal from the Warrior Worlds, a species that had given up fighting centuries ago after joining the Confederation. His scarred face showed the marks of ancient battles. "What threat do they pose to the galaxy? They cannot even leave their own star system effectively." Zethkari touched a control, and the hologram changed again. Now it showed projections and mathematical models. "Our scientists believe they will develop faster than light travel within 50 to 100 of their years. When they do, they will bring their violent nature to the stars. A species this aggressive, with their rapid technological development, could destabilize entire sectors." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Galactic Confederation had maintained peace for over 5,000 years by carefully managing contact with new species. They guided young civilizations toward peaceful development, helping them overcome their primitive instincts. But they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. High Arbiter Velnara rose to his full height, his energy form pulsing with concern. "The standard protocols seem inadequate for this situation. These humans show signs of Category 7 extinction risk behavior." A Category 7 rating was the highest threat level in Confederation classifications. It meant a species was likely to cause massive destruction if allowed to spread beyond their home world. Only 3 species in galactic history had ever received such a rating. 2 had destroyed themselves before developing space travel. The 3rd had been contained through permanent quarantine. Surely we can guide them as we have others, suggested Mediator Thys, her bark shifting to hopeful green. Every species can learn peace if properly taught. I have personally helped 17 different worlds overcome their violent tendencies. Zathkari shook her crystal head sadly. These humans may be different. Our behavioral analysts have studied their history extensively. They have been fighting organized wars for their entire recorded history. Violence appears to be deeply embedded in their nature. Even when they are not fighting external enemies, they fight among themselves. The hologram showed human history stretching back thousands of years. Ancient warriors with swords and shields, medieval knights in armor, soldiers with muskets and cannons, modern armies with tanks and aircraft. The technology changed, but the fighting never stopped. Look at their entertainment, Zathkari continued. They create stories about war and conflict for pleasure. Their sports often simulate combat. Their children play games about fighting. Violence is not just something they do, it is something they enjoy. High Arbiter Velnara studied the data carefully. As the oldest member of the Council, he had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. What do our deep analysts recommend? Standard containment protocols, Zathkari replied. Establish a quantum barrier around their star system. Prevent them from developing faster than light travel. Monitor them from a distance until they either achieve peace or destroy themselves. The suggestion caused an uproar in the chamber. Several council members stood to object. The Salathi delegate Thys spoke first, her bark now bright orange with distress. We cannot simply abandon an entire species. It goes against everything the Confederation stands for. The risk is too great, argued Commander Herextal. If they break containment, they could threaten dozens of peaceful worlds. Sometimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Mediator Thys, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke. She was known throughout the galaxy as the most skilled diplomat alive, having prevented more wars than anyone could count. Her empathic abilities allowed her to understand and calm the most aggressive minds. I propose an alternative, she said, her melodic voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Allow me to attempt direct contact. If anyone can reach these humans and guide them toward peace, it would be the 3 of us working together. She gestured to herself, Zathkari, and Thys. The chamber buzzed with conversation as council members discussed this proposal. Direct contact with a pre-space flight species was rare and required unanimous approval from the High Council. It was usually only attempted when a species showed clear signs they were ready for galactic citizenship. High Arbiter Velnara raised his hand for silence. You would risk exposing the Confederation to a potentially hostile species. If they prove truly unredeemable, knowledge of our existence could accelerate their drive to develop military technologies. But if we succeed, Thys argued, we save an entire species and potentially gain valuable new members for the Confederation. Their creativity and technological innovation could benefit the galaxy if properly directed. Zathkari considered this carefully. As an ambassador, she had successfully negotiated the end of the Vorthon-Kaleth War, a conflict that had raged for 2 centuries. If anyone could reach the humans, it would be their combined diplomatic skills. What would you propose? She asked. Thys smiled, an expression that looked strange on her tree-like features. We approach them openly but carefully. We present ourselves as peaceful representatives of galactic civilization. We offer them a choice. Join us and learn the ways of peace, or remain isolated on their world until they mature enough to join us safely. An ultimatum disguised as an invitation, mused High Arbiter Velnara. Interesting. It gives them agency, while protecting the galaxy. Zathkari nodded slowly. We could offer them advanced technology in exchange for abandoning their violent ways. Medical knowledge to cure their diseases. Clean energy to heal their damaged environment. The promise of the stars if they prove worthy. And if they refuse, asked Commander Hrextal. Then we implement standard containment protocols, Thys replied firmly. But at least we will have tried, and they will understand why they remain isolated. The debate continued for hours. Some council members worried about the risk of contact with such an aggressive species. Others felt that abandoning any species without attempting to help them violated the Confederation's core principles. Finally, High Arbiter Velnara called for a vote. All those in favor of attempting diplomatic contact with the humans of Terra 3? Lights appeared above each council member's seat as they cast their votes. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstention. Slowly, the chamber filled with mostly green lights. When the counting was done, the result was clear. Motion carries, Velnara announced. Direct contact is authorized. Ambassador Zethkari, Mediator Thys, and Harmony Speaker Nalthis will comprise the contact team. Zethkari felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. This would be the most important diplomatic mission of her long life. The fate of an entire species, and possibly the safety of the galaxy, would depend on their success. When do we depart? Asked Thys. Immediately, High Arbiter Velnara replied. Our scientists estimate the humans are close to several technological breakthroughs that could accelerate their development. We must reach them before they advance too far to be guided safely. As the council session ended, Zethkari remained behind to study the data about humanity one more time. The holographic images showed scenes of both great beauty and terrible destruction. Humans creating magnificent art and music, then turning around to wage war with scientific precision. Children playing happily in parks while soldiers fought and died on distant battlefields. What kind of species were these humans really? Were they irredeemably violent, or simply young and misguided? Could the combined wisdom of the galaxy's greatest diplomats reach them, or would they reject any attempt at guidance? Zethkari knew that in a few days she would have her answers. The ship Peaceful Convergence was already being prepared for the journey to Earth. Advanced diplomatic protocols were being loaded into its computers. Translation algorithms capable of understanding any language were being calibrated. Soon she would stand before the leaders of humanity and offer them the greatest choice in their species' history. She could only hope they would be wise enough to choose correctly, for their sake, and for the sake of every peaceful world in the galaxy. The Crystal Ambassador turned away from the holographic display and walked toward the docking bay where her ship waited. Behind her, the image of Earth continued to rotate slowly, a beautiful blue marble that might soon become either the galaxy's newest member or its most dangerous enemy. Only time would tell which it would be. The ship Peaceful Convergence slipped quietly into Earth's solar system like a needle through silk. It was beautiful, in the way that only truly advanced technology could be. A kilometer-long vessel that seemed to be made of liquid silver and light. Its hull reflected the distant sun in patterns that shifted and flowed like water. Inside the ship, Ambassador Zethkari stood before a massive viewing screen that showed the blue-green world growing larger ahead of them. Beside her, Mediator Thys swayed gently, her bark-like skin shifting through various shades of green as she processed the emotional resonance coming from the planet below. So much conflict, Thys whispered, her voice carrying the musical quality of wind through leaves. I can feel it even from here. Fear, anger, hope, despair, all mixed together in ways I have never experienced. The third member of their team approached from the navigation station. Harmony Speaker Nalthis moved with fluid grace, her luminous form wrapped in robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. As an empath of the highest order, she could sense the thoughts and feelings of entire populations. Their emotions are intense, Nalthis said, her voice like distant music. Most species we encounter have learned to moderate their feelings through collective wisdom. These humans burn with passion in every thought. Zethkari nodded, her crystal body refracting the light from the viewing screen into rainbow patterns on the walls. Our analysts warned us about this. Humans appear to experience emotions more strongly than most galactic species. It may explain both their creativity and their tendency toward violence. The ship's artificial intelligence spoke in a calm, neutral tone. We are now entering the outer edge of their sensor range. Shall I begin broadcasting our peaceful intentions? Yes, Zeth-Kari replied. Use all their languages simultaneously. We want them to understand we come in peace. Across Earth, radio telescopes and satellite networks suddenly picked up signals unlike anything they had ever detected. The messages came in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi, and dozens of other languages, all speaking the same words at exactly the same time. People of Earth, the message began. We greet you in peace and friendship. We are representatives of the Galactic Confederation, a union of civilized worlds that spans this galaxy. We have traveled far to meet you and offer you a place among the stars. Please do not be afraid. We come only to talk. In government buildings around the world, emergency alarms began to sound. The President of the United States was pulled from a cabinet meeting. The Premier of China was woken from sleep. The Prime Minister of the European Federation was rushed to a secure bunker. Within minutes, every major leader on Earth knew that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. The alien ship made no aggressive moves. It simply took position in a stable orbit above the Pacific Ocean and continued broadcasting its peaceful message every hour. Its massive size was visible to the naked eye from Earth's surface, hanging in the sky like a second moon. Dr. Sarah Chen, the United Nations Secretary General, found herself thrust into the most important moment in human history. She stood in the emergency session hall in Geneva, surrounded by representatives from every nation on Earth. The arguing had been going on for 6 hours. We must respond with caution, insisted President Martinez of the Americas Union. We know nothing about these beings or their true intentions. But they're offering us contact with galactic civilization, countered Prime Minister Singh of the Indian Federation. This could solve every problem we face: energy, climate change, disease. We cannot let fear drive our decision. Chancellor Hoffmann of the Germanic states shook her head grimly. History teaches us to be suspicious of those who claim to come in peace, but arrive with overwhelming military superiority. That ship could destroy our entire planet if it chose to. Dr. Chen called for order, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. The aliens have requested a meeting with what they call our supreme governing authority. Since no such thing exists, they will have to settle for this assembly. High above them, the 3 alien diplomats prepared for the most important first contact in galactic history. They had studied human culture extensively, but actually meeting them would be different. Humans were known to be unpredictable in ways that most species were not. Remember, Zeth-Kari told her companions, we must be firm, but fair. Offer them the benefits of joining galactic civilization, but make clear that their violent tendencies cannot be allowed to spread to other worlds. Thais nodded, her empathic abilities already reaching out to sense the emotional state of the humans below. They are frightened, but also excited. Curious but cautious. It is a complex mixture I have rarely encountered. Their minds are unusual, added Nalthis, her luminous form flickering slightly with concentration. Most species think in predictable patterns. These humans seem to consider multiple possibilities simultaneously. It makes them difficult to read. The transport beam activated and the 3 aliens materialized in the center of the United Nations Assembly Hall. The effect was designed to be impressive but non-threatening. A gentle cascade of golden light that deposited them on the speaking platform without any visible technology. The hall fell absolutely silent. Every human present stared at the 3 beings who had just appeared before them. They were clearly alien but beautiful in their strangeness. Zeth-Kari stood in the center, her crystal body catching the hall's lights and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls and ceiling. She was tall and elegant, roughly humanoid in shape but clearly not human. Her face was angular and geometric, with eyes that sparkled like cut diamonds. To her left stood Thais, who looked like a graceful tree that had learned to walk. Her bark-like skin shifted through shades of green and brown, and delicate branch-like appendages served as her arms. Leaves rustled softly around her head like living hair. On the right was Nalthis, the most alien of the three. She appeared to be made of living light, her form constantly shifting and flowing within robes that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself. Where her face should be was a gentle glow that somehow conveyed both wisdom and compassion. Ambassador. Zethkari stepped forward and spoke, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the hall without any visible amplification. When she spoke, her words came out in perfect English, though the humans somehow understood that she was simultaneously speaking every language on Earth. Leaders of humanity, she began, her tone formal but not unfriendly. We greet you in the name of the Galactic Confederation. We are Ambassador Zethkari of the Crystalline Hegemony, Mediator Thais of the Scifi Collective, and Harmony Speaker Nalthis of the Ethereal Assembly. Dr. Chen stood slowly, her diplomatic training taking over despite the surreal situation. Welcome to Earth. I am Dr. Sarah Chen, Secretary General of the United Nations. We greet you in the name of all humanity. Zethkari inclined her head in what might have been a bow. We have observed your world for some time, Dr. Chen. Your species shows great potential, but also great cause for concern. The Crystal Ambassador gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air above the assembly. It showed scenes from Earth, but not the peaceful, beautiful images that humans might have chosen to represent themselves. Instead, it showed wars, pollution, weapons, testing, and environmental destruction. In the 3 years we have studied you, we have witnessed behavior that troubles the galactic community, Zethkari continued. You possess nuclear weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. You wage chemical and biological warfare. You poison your own environment and drive other species to extinction. Murmurs of discomfort rippled through the assembly. Some representatives looked ashamed, others defensive. President Martinez stood up, his face set in hard lines. We are not perfect, he said firmly, but we are learning. Humanity has also created great art, made scientific discoveries, and shown tremendous capacity for compassion and cooperation. This swayed forward, her bark shifting to a warmer green. This is true, she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. We have observed your capacity for both creation and destruction. It is precisely this potential that brings us here today. Nalthis spoke for the first time, her voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The Galactic Confederation has maintained peace for over 5,000 of your years. We have guided hundreds of species from primitive violence to civilized cooperation. We offer you the same opportunity. Dr. Chen felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. What exactly are you offering? Zethkari's diamond-like eyes seemed to sparkle with possibilities. Membership in galactic civilization, access to technologies that could solve your energy crisis, heal your damaged environment, and cure your diseases, the chance to walk among the stars and meet thousands of other intelligent species. The hall erupted in excited conversation. The possibilities were staggering. Clean, unlimited energy, the ability to travel to other worlds, contact with alien civilizations beyond imagination. It seemed like humanity's every dream was being offered to them on a silver platter. But President Martinez was not easily impressed. And what would you require in return? The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Zethkari's expression became more serious, her rainbow patterns dimming slightly. Humanity would need to demonstrate its commitment to peace, she said carefully. Your military technologies would need to be regulated to prevent threats to other worlds. Aggressive national behaviors would need to be moderated. Your expansion beyond this world would be monitored and guided to ensure compatibility with galactic civilization. The excitement in the hall began to cool as the implications became clear. Chancellor Hoffman stood up, her voice sharp with suspicion. You're talking about placing humanity under some form of galactic supervision? Guidance, corrected Thys, her bark shifting to defensive orange. Every species requires time to adapt to galactic norms. We would help you overcome your primitive instincts and develop more civilized approaches to conflict resolution. Primitive instincts? The words came from an unexpected source, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the representative from the Japanese Federation. She was known as one of the most peaceful and diplomatic people in the assembly. Who gave you the right to judge our entire species? Nalthis extended her empathic senses, trying to calm the growing tension in the room. But instead of the fear and gratitude she expected to find, she encountered something that made her luminous form flicker with alarm. The humans were not afraid of the aliens' superior technology. They were not desperate for galactic guidance. Instead, she sensed a cold, calculating intelligence and something else. Something that felt almost like, "You seem surprised by our questions," observed Dr. Chen, watching the aliens' reactions carefully. "Did you expect us to simply accept your offer without discussion?" Zethkari straightened, her crystal body ringing faintly like a bell. Most species are eager to join galactic civilization when offered the opportunity. The benefits are obvious, and the alternative is continued isolation and eventual self-destruction. "The alternative," repeated President Martinez slowly. "Meaning, if we refuse your guidance, you'll leave us alone?" The three aliens exchanged glances that somehow conveyed volumes of communication without words. Finally, Zethkari spoke again, and this time her tone was noticeably cooler. "If humanity proves unable or unwilling to accept peaceful integration into galactic society, then for the safety of all civilized worlds, you would indeed remain isolated, until such time as you demonstrate the wisdom necessary for responsible membership." The hall fell silent as the true nature of the alien offer became clear. It wasn't really an offer at all. It was an ultimatum wrapped in diplomatic language: submit to alien oversight or remain forever trapped on Earth. Dr. Chen looked around the assembly, seeing the same realization dawning on face after face. Humanity was being offered a choice, but not the kind of choice they had hoped for. They could surrender their independence and become junior partners in someone else's galaxy, or they could remain prisoners on their own world. She took a deep breath and stood to address the alien diplomats. When she spoke, her voice carried a quiet strength that surprised even herself. "Thank you for your offer," she said politely. "We will need time to discuss this among ourselves before giving you an answer." The three aliens nodded, apparently expecting this response. "Of course," Zethkari replied. "Take all the time you need. We will remain in orbit until you are ready to proceed." As the aliens prepared to transport back to their ship, Nalthis extended her empathic abilities one more time, trying to get a final reading on the human emotional state. What she found made her recoil in shock. The humans were not afraid. They were not desperate. They were not even particularly impressed by the aliens' technology. Instead, she sensed something she had never encountered in thousands of years of diplomatic contact: a cold, patient determination that felt almost predatory in its intensity. For the first time in her long life, Harmony speaker Nalthis wondered if perhaps they had made a terrible mistake in coming to Earth. The emergency session of the United Nations continued long into the night. Representatives from every nation on Earth argued, debated, and discussed the alien offer in dozens of languages. Coffee and energy drinks flowed like water as humanity's leaders grappled with the most important decision in their species' history. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, feeling the weight of billions of human lives pressing down on her shoulders. Around her, the debate raged on with passionate intensity. "We have to accept," insisted Prime Minister Singh, his voice hoarse from hours of arguing. "They're offering us solutions to every problem we face. Climate change, energy crisis, overpopulation. They can help us fix it all." Chancellor Hoffman shook her head vigorously. "At what cost? They want to control our military, our government, our entire way of life. We would become pets in their galactic zoo." President Martinez leaned forward in his chair, his eyes hard with determination. "Has anyone else noticed they never actually asked us what we wanted? They observed us for 3 years and decided we needed their guidance. They didn't even try to communicate with us before making their judgment." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "That is troubling. In all their talk of peace and civilization, They seem to assume they know what's best for us better than we do ourselves. High above them, aboard the ship Peaceful Convergence, the three alien diplomats were having their own intense discussion. The meeting had not gone as expected, and they were trying to understand why. Their response pattern is completely outside normal parameters, Zethkari said, her crystal body dim with confusion. Most species show either eager acceptance or overwhelming fear when first contacted. These humans show neither. Thais swayed nervously, her bark cycling through shades of brown and orange. They asked questions I have never heard before. About our right to judge them, about alternatives to our offer. Most species are simply grateful for the opportunity to join galactic civilization. Naltis remained silent, her luminous form flickering with uncertainty. She was still processing what she had sensed from the human minds below. There had been something there, hiding beneath their diplomatic politeness that felt dangerous in a way she couldn't explain. Perhaps we underestimated their pride, Zethkari mused. Young species often have inflated opinions of their own capabilities. Once they understand the true scope of galactic civilization, they usually become more reasonable. But even as she said it, the Crystal Ambassador felt a nagging doubt. The humans hadn't seemed proud or arrogant. They had seemed calculating, as if they were evaluating the aliens rather than being overwhelmed by them. Back on Earth, the debate was taking an unexpected turn. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the Japanese representative who had questioned the aliens' right to judge humanity, stood to address the assembly. "Has anyone considered," she said quietly, "that these aliens might not be as advanced as they claim?" The hall fell silent. It was a startling suggestion that nobody had dared voice before. "Think about it," Dr. Tanaka continued. "They observed us for 3 years and completely misunderstood our nature. They expected us to be grateful for their condescending offer. They seem genuinely surprised that we have questions. Is this really the behavior of a supremely advanced civilization?" President Martinez nodded slowly. "And their technology, while impressive, isn't as far beyond ours as they want us to believe. Faster than light travel, yes, matter transportation, certainly, but nothing that violates the fundamental laws of physics. Nothing that suggests they're thousands of years ahead of us." Dr. Chen felt a chill run down her spine as she began to see where this line of thinking was leading. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Dr. Tanaka said carefully, "that maybe we shouldn't be so quick to assume they're our superiors. Maybe they're just older, not necessarily wiser." The implications hung in the air like a thundercloud. If the aliens weren't the godlike beings they pretended to be, then their ultimatum became something very different. It became a threat from equals who thought they were dealing with primitives. Dr. Chen's secure phone buzzed with an urgent message. She read it quickly, her eyes widening with each word. Then she stood and addressed the assembly. "I've just received word from our military and scientific advisors," she announced. "They want to brief us on some interesting developments." 30 minutes later, the assembly reconvened in a secure briefing room deep beneath the UN building. The room was equipped with the most advanced security systems on Earth, designed to prevent any form of electronic surveillance. General Rebecca Torres, the Earth Defense Coordinator, stood at the front of the room next to a large display screen. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much conflict, but her presence commanded instant respect from everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "what I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. Until 12 hours ago, only a handful of people on Earth knew this information existed." The screen lit up with technical diagrams and data that looked like science fiction made real. Energy readings, structural analyses, and weapon specifications scrolled past in dizzying arrays. "Since the alien ship entered our solar system, every sensor we have has been pointed at it," General Torres continued. "We've learned some very interesting things." Dr. Chen leaned forward, her heart racing. "What kind of things?" "Their ship is impressive, but it's not invincible," Torres replied. "Our analysis suggests their technology is perhaps 50 to 100 years ahead of ours in most areas. Advanced? Yes. Godlike? No." The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. If the aliens weren't as far advanced as they seemed, then humanity wasn't as helpless as everyone had assumed. But more importantly, Torres continued, we've detected something else. Energy signatures from locations around Earth that we didn't expect. The screen changed to show a map of the world dotted with glowing points. There were dozens of them, scattered across every continent and several locations in the oceans. What are those? Asked President Martinez. Dr. Sarah Kovacs, Earth's chief science advisor, stepped forward. She was a brilliant woman who had spent her entire career studying theoretical physics and technologies that most people thought were impossible. Those, she said with a slight smile, are installations that have been hidden from public view for decades, projects that officially don't exist, technologies that the scientific community has been developing in secret since the end of World War II. The room erupted in shocked conversation. Secret technology? Hidden installations? It sounded like conspiracy theories come to life. Dr. Kovacs raised her hand for silence. When humanity first detected radio signals from space in the 1940s, some very intelligent people began asking a simple question: what happens when someone out there notices us? Project Prometheus was born from that question. She clicked a control, and the display showed historical documents stamped with classifications so high that most of the people in the room had never seen them before. For over 70 years, Kovacs continued, the brightest minds on Earth have been working on a single goal: ensuring that when we finally made contact with alien intelligence, we would not be helpless victims. Every major technological breakthrough, every scientific advance, every space program, they all fed into Prometheus. General Torres took over again. The wars the aliens observed, the conflicts they think show our primitive nature, many of those were cover stories, field tests for weapons and strategies designed specifically for asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Everything they thought they knew about recent human history was apparently wrong. The arms races, the space programs, the international tensions, it had all been part of a massive, coordinated effort to prepare for this exact moment. You're saying we've been preparing for alien contact since the 1940s? Dr. Chen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm saying, Dr. Kovacs replied, that when those aliens scanned our planet, they saw what we wanted them to see: a primitive species engaged in pointless conflicts, unaware of the greater universe around them. They never detected the real infrastructure we've been building. The screen showed images that looked like they came from a science fiction movie. Massive underground, facilities carved into the Earth's crust, orbital platforms disguised as space debris, energy systems that seemed to violate known physics, weapons that looked like they could crack planets. How is this possible? Stammered Chancellor Hoffman. How could something this large be kept secret? General Torres smiled grimly. Because the people working on it thought they were working on separate, unrelated projects. A physicist developing new energy systems thought she was working on clean power. An engineer designing advanced materials thought he was building better spacecraft. A weapons specialist creating new defensive systems thought she was preparing for conventional warfare. Only a few dozen people ever knew the full scope of Prometheus, added Dr. Kovacs. Until today. The alien arrival triggered protocols that have been dormant for decades. Suddenly, all these separate projects are revealing themselves as parts of a larger whole. President Martinez stared at the displays in amazement. Are you telling me that we're not as helpless as we thought? I'm telling you, General Torres replied, that those aliens made a very dangerous mistake. They assumed we were primitive because our technology appeared primitive. They never considered that we might be intentionally hiding our true capabilities. Dr. Chen felt the world shifting around her as she absorbed these revelations. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for longer than she had been alive. The aliens thought they were dealing with naive children, but instead they had walked into a carefully prepared trap. What are our real capabilities? She asked. Dr. Kovacs' smile was cold and calculating. Let's just say that when those aliens decided to threaten us with isolation, they made the same mistake that human enemies have been making for centuries. They underestimated what humans are capable of when they feel cornered. The assembly sat in stunned silence as the full implications became clear. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species ready for guidance. Instead, they had discovered a predator that had been patiently preparing for their arrival. High above them, aboard the peaceful Convergence, Harmony speaker Nalthais suddenly gasped in alarm. Her empathic abilities had just detected something impossible. A massive surge of purposeful, coordinated thought from across the planet below. Something is happening, she told her companions urgently. The human emotional pattern just changed completely. Where there was confusion and fear, now there is focus, unity, determination. Zethkari moved to the sensor station, her crystal body reflecting the warning lights that had suddenly begun flashing across the ship's displays. I'm detecting energy signatures from across their planet, massive ones. How is this possible? Thais swayed with agitation, her bark shifting to deep red. These readings, they suggest technology almost as advanced as our own. But that's impossible. We observed them for 3 years. They're primitive. On the screens around them, new contacts began appearing throughout Earth's solar system. Objects that had been hiding in the asteroid belt, disguised as space debris, suddenly powered up and revealed themselves as artificial constructs of enormous size and obvious military purpose. They were hiding, Zethkari whispered in disbelief. The entire time we were observing them, they were hiding their true capabilities. The 3 alien diplomats stared at the displays in growing horror as they realized what they had done. They hadn't discovered a primitive species in need of guidance. They had awakened something that had been patiently waiting for them, and now it was too late to take back their ultimatum. Below them, in the secure briefing room beneath the United Nations building, Dr. Sarah Chen stood to address the assembly, one final time. The aliens offered us a choice, she said, her voice steady and calm. Submit to their guidance, or remain isolated on Earth. I think it's time we showed them that they overlooked a third option. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood in the command center of Installation Omega, a facility that officially did not exist. Located 3 miles beneath the Mariana Trench, it was one of the most advanced military installations in human history. Round her dozens of technicians worked at stations that hummed with technology decades ahead of anything the public had ever seen. The main display showed the alien ship hanging in orbit above Earth, still broadcasting its messages of peaceful intention. But now, humanity was looking back with eyes the aliens never knew existed. Status report, Torres commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. Commander Sarah Mitchell, Torres's second-in-command, consulted her displays. All Prometheus installations are now online and reporting ready status. Orbital platforms have dropped their camouflage and are moving into position. Deep space sensors show no additional alien contacts. Within 50 light-years, Torres nodded grimly. Good. It appears our visitors came alone, which suggests they're either very confident or very naive. Given what we've learned about them, I'm leaning toward naive. High above them, the 3 alien diplomats were experiencing the first real fear they had felt in centuries. Their ship's sensors were detecting impossible things, energy signatures that suggested technology rivaling their own, hidden installations that somehow escaped detection for 3 years of careful observation, and worst of all, weapon systems that seemed to be analyzing their ship's defenses in real time. How is this possible? Zethkari demanded, her crystal body flickering with stress patterns. Our sensors are the most advanced in the galaxy. We would have detected any significant technology during our survey. Thais swayed nervously, her bark cycling through colors that indicated deep confusion and growing alarm. Unless they were intentionally hiding it from us. But that would require a level of sophistication we never credited them with. Nalthis reached out with her empathic abilities, trying to understand what the humans were feeling. What she found made her luminous form dim with shock. They're not afraid, she whispered. They're not confused or overwhelmed. They're excited, eager, as if they've been waiting for this moment their entire lives. The ship's communication system activated without their command. causing all three aliens to spin toward the main display in alarm. A human face appeared on the screen, an older woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to look directly through them. "Good evening," Admiral Torres said politely. "I am Admiral Rebecca Torres, Earth Defense Coordinator. I believe we need to have a conversation." Zethkari stepped forward, trying to maintain her diplomatic composure despite the growing alarm she felt. "Admiral Torres, I am Ambassador Zethkari. We are still waiting for your government's response to our offer of membership in the Galactic Confederation." Torres smiled, and there was something in that expression that made all three aliens take an involuntary step backward. "Oh, we've made our decision. But first, I think there are some things you should know about humanity that you missed during your 3-year observation period." The display split to show images from around Earth, but these weren't the scenes of conflict and environmental destruction the aliens had observed before. Instead, they showed massive technological installations emerging from hidden locations around the globe. In the Sahara Desert, a structure the size of a small city rose from beneath the sand. Its gleaming metal surface was covered with arrays and transmitters that hummed with barely contained energy. Similar installations emerged from the Amazon rainforest, the Siberian tundra, and the Antarctic ice sheet. Installation Alpha in North Africa, Torres explained conversationally, primarily focused on energy weapons and defensive systems. Installation Beta in South America handles advanced materials research and manufacturing. Installation Gamma in Siberia develops faster-than-light communication systems, and Installation Delta in Antarctica. Well, that's where we keep our more exotic weapons. The aliens watched in growing horror as the true scope of human preparation revealed itself. These weren't recent constructions. The age of the metal, the integration with local geology, everything suggested these facilities had been built over decades. "This is impossible," Thais stammered, her bark now completely red with alarm. "Our deep scans would have detected any large-scale construction projects." "Would they?" Torres asked pleasantly. "Tell me, Ambassador, how thoroughly did you scan the Earth's core?" The question hit the aliens like a physical blow. Standard galactic survey protocols focused on surface and near-surface technology. Few species had the ability or desire to build significant installations in their planet's interior. "You see," Torres continued, "when humanity first detected radio signals from space nearly a century ago, some very smart people asked a simple question. What happens when someone notices us? Project Prometheus was created to answer that question." The display showed historical footage, grainy black and white images of scientists working in underground laboratories, engineers building massive machines in caverns carved from solid rock, military personnel testing weapons that seemed to violate known physics. For 80 years, the brightest minds on Earth have been working toward a single goal, ensuring that when we finally made contact with alien intelligence, we would meet them as equals, not as supplicants begging for guidance. Zethkari felt her crystal structure resonating with stress harmonics she hadn't experienced since her youth. "You've been preparing for contact since before you achieved spaceflight?" "Oh, much longer than that," Torres replied. "You see, humans have always known we weren't alone in the universe. We just didn't know when our neighbors would come calling. So we decided to be ready." The display shifted to show new images. Orbital installations that had been disguised as space debris suddenly revealing their true nature. What the aliens had dismissed as primitive satellites and defunct spacecraft were actually sophisticated weapons platforms and sensor arrays. "Platform Hermes handles orbital defense," Torres explained. "Platform Apollo manages deep space surveillance. Platform Artemis coordinates our missile defense network. And Platform Ares, well, that's our big stick." As if summoned by her words, something massive began to move in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. What had appeared to be a large asteroid slowly rotated to reveal itself as an artificial construct, a space station the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that hurt to look at directly. "You've been hiding an entire military infrastructure," Nalthis said, her voice barely audible with shock. "We've been preparing for survival," Torres corrected. "You see, Ambassador, humanity has learned some hard lessons about what happens When a technologically superior force arrives claiming to bring peace and civilization, it doesn't usually end well for the natives. The truth of that statement hit the aliens like cold water. In their thousands of years of guiding younger species, they had never encountered one that had prepared for their arrival. Most civilizations were either too primitive to resist or too grateful for advanced technology to question the terms. Now, Torres continued, her voice taking on a harder edge, let's talk about your ultimatum. Submit to galactic guidance or remain isolated on Earth. I'm afraid you overlooked a third option. What third option? Zethkari asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. Torres's smile became predatory. The option where humanity takes its place among the stars on its own terms, whether the Galactic Confederation approves or not. The implications hung in the space between them like a loaded weapon. The aliens had come expecting to find a primitive species they could easily guide or contain. Instead, they had discovered a civilization that had spent decades preparing to resist exactly the kind of control they offered. You cannot be serious, this said, her bark now cycling through colors that indicated panic. The Galactic Confederation has maintained peace for 5,000 years. You cannot simply ignore our authority. Authority? Torres laughed, and the sound sent chills through all three aliens. What authority? You observed us without permission. You judged us without understanding. You offered us membership in your confederation while making it clear that refusal would result in imprisonment on our own world. That's not authority. That's extortion. On their ship's sensors, the aliens could see that they were now surrounded. Human vessels had emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, moving with coordination that suggested advanced command and control systems. But more disturbing than their numbers was their technology, sensors that seemed to be actively scanning the alien ship, learning its weaknesses and capabilities. Dr. Kovac, Torres said, speaking to someone off-screen, please explain to our guests what they're seeing. A new figure appeared on the display, a brilliant-looking woman with eyes that sparkled with scientific curiosity and more than a little madness. Dr. Sarah Kovac had spent her entire career pushing the boundaries of theoretical physics, and now her work was finally being revealed to the world. Quantum entanglement communication networks, she said cheerfully, as if discussing the weather. Exotic matter manipulation systems, gravity wave detection and analysis, faster than light sensors based on tachyon particle streams. Oh, and my personal favorite, adaptive artificial intelligence systems that can analyze and replicate alien technology in real time. Zethkari felt her crystal structure begin to vibrate with harmonics of pure terror. You're analyzing our ship? We've been analyzing your ship since the moment you entered our solar system, Kovac replied. Your stealth systems are quite good, but they're based on conventional physics. We've been working with unconventional physics for decades. The alien ship's defense systems suddenly activated without command, responding to scanning beams that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their shields. Warning lights flashed across every console as their most advanced protective measures were systematically probed and catalogued. Stop this immediately, this demanded, her empathic abilities reaching out to try to calm the human minds she could sense. But instead of the chaotic emotion she expected, she encountered something that made her recoil in horror. A vast network of interconnected human consciousness, all focused on a single goal with predatory intensity. I'm afraid we can't do that, Torres replied calmly. You see, you made this an all-or-nothing proposition when you offered us your ultimatum, submit or be contained. Well, we choose option 3. We take what we want and ignore your objections. Nalthis extended her empathic abilities to their fullest extent, trying to understand what kind of minds could be so cold and calculating. What she found defied everything she thought she knew about intelligent species. The humans weren't acting out of fear or desperation. They were acting out of careful, long-term planning and absolute confidence in their abilities. You don't understand, she whispered. The Galactic Confederation has technology beyond your comprehension. If you resist, if you try to expand beyond this system, you'll face the combined might of thousands of worlds. Tora's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes became even harder. And you don't understand what humanity is capable of when we're threatened. You think your confederation is impressive because it maintains peace among thousands of species? We've been at war with ourselves for our entire history and we're still here. We've turned conflict into an art form. She leaned forward, and her next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Your confederation survives because it's never faced a real challenge. Species that join willingly are already peaceful. Species that resist are primitive and easily contained. But what happens when your confederation faces a species that's both advanced and absolutely unwilling to submit? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. For the first time in their long lives, the three alien diplomats were beginning to understand that they had made a fundamental error in judgment. They had mistaken humanity's surface conflicts for primitive aggression, when in reality they had been observing a species that had weaponized conflict itself. "You're making a terrible mistake," Zethkari said desperately. "The Confederation will not allow a rogue species to threaten galactic peace." Tora stood up, her figure filling the display screen. Behind her, technicians worked at stations that hummed with barely contained power. "Then they'll have to stop us," she said simply. "And I very much doubt they can." The transmission ended, leaving the three aliens alone with their growing terror and the inescapable realization that they had awakened something that should have been left sleeping. Outside their ship, human vessels continued to multiply, each one representing technology that shouldn't exist and capabilities that defied galactic understanding. For the first time in galactic history, the Confederation's envoys had encountered a species that looked at their ultimatum and laughed. The galaxy would never be the same. High Arbiter Velnara materialized on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Harmony, with fury radiating from his energy form like heat from a star. Around him, the command crew of various alien species worked frantically at their stations, trying to make sense of the impossible readings coming from the primitive world they had come to contain. "Report," he commanded, his voice echoing with the power of 10,000 years of authority. Fleet Commander Zendar, a heavily armored being from the Hegemony Warworlds, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "High Arbiter, the situation has deteriorated beyond our expectations." The main display showed the Sol system in tactical overview. What should have been a simple containment operation had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Dozens of human vessels moved with coordinated precision, their energy signatures indicating technology that rivaled the Confederation's own. "How many ships?" Velnara asked, his energy form flickering with barely controlled anger. "We count 47. Active vessels with more emerging from hiding every hour," Zendar replied. "But High Arbiter, their technology appears to be adaptive. Our sensors indicate they're analyzing our ships in real time and making improvements to their own systems, based on what they learn." Velnara turned to study the tactical display more carefully. The human ships were smaller than Confederation vessels, but they moved with an agility that suggested advanced propulsion systems. More disturbing, they seemed to be actively scanning, the alien fleet learning its capabilities and weaknesses. "What of our peace envoys?" "Ambassador Zethkari reports that first contact protocols have failed completely," Zendar said grimly. "The humans rejected our guidance offer and have begun demonstrating military capabilities we never detected during the survey period." Aniao, the bridge of the peaceful convergence, the three alien diplomats huddled around their sensors in growing despair. Everything they thought they knew about humanity had been proven wrong in the most terrifying way possible. "They've been planning this for decades," This whispered, her bark now permanently deep red with alarm. "Every conflict we observed, every war we thought showed their primitive nature. It was all preparation for this moment." Nalthis reached out with her empathic abilities, trying to understand the human mindset. What she found made her luminous, form flicker with terror. "They're not afraid of us," she reported. "They're excited, as if they've been waiting their entire lives for this opportunity to test themselves against galactic civilization." Zethkari studied the energy readings from the human vessels surrounding them. "Their weapon systems are unlike anything in our databases. They seemed designed specifically for asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. The truth was becoming undeniable. Humanity had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. First contact with a superior, alien force that would try to control or contain them. Every aspect of their preparation had been designed to turn their technological disadvantage into a strategic advantage. Back on Earth, Admiral Torres stood in the command center of Installation Omega, watching as her carefully laid plans unfolded with mechanical precision. Around her, the greatest military minds in human history coordinated the most important battle their species had ever fought. "Status of the orbital platforms?" she asked. "All platforms report ready," Commander Mitchell replied. "Platform Ares has achieved optimal firing position. The exotic matter cannon is charged and ready." Torres nodded, then activated a communication channel to the alien fleet. She wanted them to understand exactly what they were facing before the demonstration began. The main display in the Eternal Harmony flickered to life, showing Torres's face. High Arbiter Velnara moved to face the screen, his energy form pulsing with barely contained power. "I am High Arbiter Velnara of the Galactic Confederation," he announced in a voice that had commanded respect across the galaxy for millennia. "You will stand down immediately and submit to Confederation authority." Torres smiled, and there was something in that expression that made every alien on the bridge take an involuntary step backward. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, High Arbiter. You see, you made a fundamental error when you came here." "And what error was that?" Velnara demanded. "You assumed we were primitive because our technology appeared primitive," Torres replied. "You never considered that we might be hiding our true capabilities. Worse, you offered us an ultimatum without understanding what kind of species we were dealing with." The display split to show images from across the Sol system. Hidden installations were revealing themselves throughout the asteroid belt, on the moons of the outer planets, and in deep space locations that should have been impossible to reach with human technology. For 80 years, humanity has been preparing for this day, Torres continued. Every war you observed was a field test. Every arms race was research and development. Every conflict was training for the war we knew would eventually come. High Arbiter Velnara felt something he hadn't experienced in thousands of years: uncertainty. "You cannot resist the might of the Galactic Confederation. We have maintained peace for 5 millennia through superior technology and overwhelming force." "Peace through superior firepower," Torres mused. "An interesting philosophy. But what happens when your superior firepower meets someone who's spent their entire history learning how to fight enemies with superior firepower?" Before Velnara could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Confederation fleet. Their sensors were detecting massive energy buildups from multiple human installations, power levels that seemed to violate known physics. "Dr. Kovac," Torres said, speaking to someone off-screen, "please show our guests what humanity has learned about exotic physics. On platform Ares, deep in the asteroid belt, Dr. Sarah Kovac stood before a weapon that represented the pinnacle of human scientific achievement. The exotic matter cannon was a device that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional galactic science, but human scientists had never been constrained by conventional thinking. "Firing solution confirmed," she announced cheerfully. "Target: the space between the lead Confederation vessels. We want to demonstrate capability, not cause unnecessary casualties." The weapon fired, and space itself seemed to tear. A beam of exotic matter, particles that existed in violation of normal physics, lanced across the solar system at impossible speed. Where it passed, the fabric of reality rippled like water. The beam struck empty space between 2 Confederation cruisers, and the effect was immediate and terrifying. A sphere of twisted space-time expanded from the impact point, its gravity fields playing havoc with every sensor and navigation system in the alien fleet. "Impossible," breathed Fleet Commander Zendar, watching his instruments register readings. That made no sense. "Matter cannot behave in such ways." Apparently, Torres's voice came from the communication channel. "Human understanding of physics has progressed beyond galactic norms. You see, when you're preparing to fight enemies with superior technology, you don't try to match their existing capabilities. You develop entirely new ones they can't defend against. High Arbiter Velnara realized with growing horror that the humans hadn't just prepared for this encounter. They had innovated beyond anything the Confederation had seen in millennia. While galactic civilization had grown comfortable with its technological superiority, humanity had been pushing the boundaries of what was possible. "This is your final warning," Velnara announced, trying to maintain his authority despite the growing fear in his energy form. "Stand down or face the consequences." Torres's smile became predatory. "No, High Arbiter. This is our final warning. To you. Leave our system immediately. Return to your Confederation and tell them that humanity will be joining galactic civilization on our own terms. Not as supplicants, not as junior partners, but as equals who demand respect. And if we refuse, then you'll discover why evolution made us apex predators." The words hung in space like a death sentence. For the first time in galactic history, a species was threatening the Confederation rather than begging for membership or cowering in fear. High Arbiter Velnara made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his existence. Pride and 5,000 years of unquestioned authority overrode his growing fear. He would not be threatened by primitives no matter how advanced they had become. "All ships," he commanded, "activate weapon systems, disable their military installations, and prepare for planetary occupation." It was the last order he would ever give as an agent of galactic peace. The moment the Confederation fleet powered weapons, humanity's true capabilities revealed themselves. Every human vessel in the system suddenly accelerated beyond anything the aliens thought possible. They didn't move like normal spacecraft. They moved like living things, flowing around gravitational fields and dancing between weapon strikes with impossible grace. But worse than their speed was their firepower. Human weapons struck the Confederation ships with energy patterns that bypassed shields designed to stop conventional attacks. Exotic matter beams tore through hull plating like paper. Gravity weapons twisted space itself, crushing alien vessels in fields of compressed time. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, half the Confederation fleet was disabled and drifting. The other half had suffered damage that would take months to repair. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed. High Arbiter Velnara found himself aboard a ship with failing life support, facing an enemy that had demonstrated they could have destroyed his entire fleet if they had chosen to. The humans had shown mercy, which somehow made their victory even more terrifying. Torres appeared on his communication screen one final time. "High Arbiter," she said conversationally, "I want you to deliver a message to your galactic confederation." "What message?" Velnara asked, his voice hollow with defeat. "Tell them that humanity is coming to the stars, not as refugees seeking sanctuary, not as students begging for knowledge, but as equals demanding our rightful place in the galaxy. Tell them that if they ever again mistake our restraint for weakness, they will discover exactly what 8 billion apex predators are, capable of when properly motivated." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "And tell them that the next time they send envoys to a world, they should ask what that world wants instead of assuming they know what's best for it." The communication ended, leaving Velnara alone, with his shattered fleet and the knowledge that he had awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. As the surviving Confederation ships limped away from Earth, human construction fleets were already at work. Massive shipyards emerged from hidden locations, beginning construction of vessels designed for deep space exploration and colonization. These weren't the ships of a species seeking permission to join galactic civilization. They were the ships of a civilization ready to claim its destiny among the stars. Ambassador Zethkari, aboard the damaged, peaceful Convergence, watched Earth shrink in the distance with growing dread. The crystal being had lived for thousands of years and seen the rise of dozens of civilizations, but she had never encountered anything like humanity. They had been sent to offer guidance to a primitive species. Instead, they had discovered a civilization that had turned its apparent primitiveness into the ultimate weapon, the element of surprise. Every assumption the Confederation had made about humanity had been wrong, And those wrong assumptions had led them into a trap decades in the making. "What have we done?" Thais whispered, her bark now permanently scarred with stress patterns that would never fade. "We've announced humanity's existence to the galaxy," Zethkari replied grimly, "and we've shown them that we are not the apex civilization we believed ourselves to be." Nalthis reached out with her empathic abilities one last time, sensing the emotional state of the humans they were leaving behind. What she found made her luminous form dim with terror. The humans weren't celebrating their victory. They weren't even satisfied with having driven off the alien fleet. Instead, they were already planning, already preparing for what would come next. They understood that this battle was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. "They're not content to simply defend their world," she reported to her companions. "They're preparing to take the fight to us, to challenge the entire structure of galactic civilization." The three envoys fell silent as the full implications became clear. The Galactic Confederation had dispatched peace envoys to Earth expecting to find a primitive species in need of guidance. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant that would reshape the galaxy according to its own vision. Behind them, Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels that would carry humanity to the stars not as supplicants or students, but as conquerors of their own destiny. The age of unquestioned Confederation authority was over. The age of humanity had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, High Arbiter Velnara composed a message that would send shockwaves through every civilized world in the galaxy. For the first time in 5,000 years, the Galactic Confederation had encountered a species that looked at their offer of membership and said no. The galaxy would never be the same.